Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here to give you guys my Halloween movie review series. I know I haven't done one in a few days. That's mainly because I've had tests and an essay to write for these last few days. So pretty much, I've just been extremely busy, so I haven't really had a chance to do any videos really. So this weekend, I plan on catching up because I don't really have a lot of homework. So I'm hoping to catch up to the day that I'm supposed to be on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna review a crap load of them for the amount of days I missed, and I believe that um I missed last Saturday, I missed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then today. Um, and then I'm gonna do one for Friday just in case. I think that will catch me up. I have to do um around 7. Um, so I'm gonna do all 7 of them. Um, and then obviously I have other videos I'm gonna catch up on, and I'll try to do that. If not this weekend, definitely next week. But let's talk about today's, or at least the first of 7 Halloween movie review series. I don't think it's 7. I think it's. I actually have the list right here. I believe it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it is 7. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna do 7 of these this weekend. Um, so yeah, let's talk about the first of 7. The first one I'm going to be reviewing is called Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. And as you can tell by the title, they had to make sure to tell everybody that Jason was coming back. This is just like the exact same thing that happened with the Halloween franchise. When the third one got made, everybody got pissed that there was no Michael Myers. Well, then they made Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. So this is pretty much the Return of Michael Myers film, all over again. Pretty much, that's how it is. Now, before I talk about how the history that went into making this movie and stuff, I'm gonna read the back like I have been for all of my other reviews that I've had the DVD for. Um, as a child, so I'm just gonna start reading it right now. I really like the way the DVD looks, by the way. As a child, Tommy Jarvis did what many others died trying to do. He killed Jason Voorhees, the mass murderer who terrorized the residents of Crystal Lake. But now, years later, Tommy is tormented by the fear that maybe Jason isn't really dead. So Thomas and a friend go to the cemetery to dig up Jason's grave. Unfortunately for Thomas, and very unfortunately for his friend, instead of finding a rotting corpse, they discover a well-rested Jason who comes back from the dead for another bloody rampage in Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Well, that's not exactly what happens, but I'll get into that later on. But yeah, that's pretty much the movie, the read aloud for this movie. That's kind of like um the a little bit of information about what's going on. So let's talk about what actually went into making this movie. Like I pretty much said, a lot of people were pissed off with Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, that there was no Jason Voorhees, even though it was a financial success. But the movie received some the worst reviews in any of the film series. Because when you don't put Jason Voorhees in your films, people are going to be pissed about that. So they decided to take out Frank Mancuso Jr., who used to produce and direct the Friday the 13th franchise, and they decided to bring in somebody new. So Mancuso hired Tom um, McLaughlin. I don't know if that's how you say his last name. And he wanted to take the movie, and Paramount Pictures wanted to take the film in a new direction. And Tom Lowen had success in other past films. Um, One of the most notable ones that they mention is a horror film called One Dark Night. Um, but he's also had some, comedy horror movies and stuff like that. And McDowell decided to take the film in a whole different direction. Um, he kind of wanted to make Jason Voorhees a supernatural character. So he used elements from the 1931 version of Frankenstein, which you can definitely see that element in there. I won't really mention it. Um, hold on. Um, and obviously wanted to go through the vampire lore and stuff like that. And he does kind of forget about the fact that Jason Voorhees survived being drowned in the second film. That's kind of forgotten about. So this takes place in a completely different universe where that didn't happen. So you kind of have to forget about the second part of the film. He was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe when with his Catholic upbringing and um, you know, the character's um, devotion to God, and that kind of gets referenced in the film. I'm not really going into too much detail because I want to kind of review the film itself as well, so I'm just kind of mentioning some things. Um, and that's about it. Um, but he also kind of uses some kind of like breaking the fourth wall type of things. And I'll explain what I mean by that later on. They don't call it that, but that's pretty much what it is. They call it postmodern meta humor, and I'll explain what that is and kind of what he means by what they mean by that. Um, and then I won't go through the cast, and I'll talk about that when I talk about the actual cast itself. Um, but yeah, um, I won't really talk. And like I said, the film and there's more behind the characters, so I won't really talk about it. Um, this film does not show a lot of nudity in it, which I thought was very different. It's the only Friday the 13th that I believe doesn't show any nudity really. I guess technically you could say the first one didn't though, because while they got naked somewhat, but there was a sex scene in that film, but you didn't actually see it. Um, you definitely saw it in the last film. Um, you saw it in um, 4, but there were sex scenes, but people would wear clothes mostly. So I would say this was the only one where people had sex with clothes on, which really isn't believable because nobody keeps their shirts on and stuff when they're having sex typically. But I thought that kind of added to the film a little bit that happened. It was very interesting. The film was filmed though in I I have to maybe I should say the movie was filmed because it's weird to say the film was filmed, but um the film was filmed. I'm just gonna keep saying it in um Covington, Georgia. I think that's how you say that, which was an area close to Atlanta, Georgia. Um, but some of the scenes, any scene that was I'm just gonna read this because this would kind of explain it. Um, The scenes involving the police department and town were filmed in Covington, while the camp scenes were filmed at Camp Daniel Morgan outside the city limits of Covington. In the film, Camp Crystal Lake has been renamed Lake Forest Green. We'll explain that later on. And surrounding Camp Daniel Morgan are Smokey the Bear signs, because Smokey the Bear was really huge back then, asking everyone to keep the forest green, which I thought was nice. And also, any of the scenes that showed them in the water was filmed in McLaughlin's father's pool, which was actually pretty cool. But um, the filter, the pool filter took some damage in the process, and the pool was just completely destroyed. Um, let's see. And then there's some other post production stuff that I'll go into when I'm done actually reviewing the film. So that's pretty much all of the background stuff I want to talk about. Um, let's talk about the actual film itself. The film was directed by Tom Lowlin, and he also wrote the film as well. It was produced by Don um, Behertz. I don't know how to say his last name. And this was obviously based on the characters of Victor Miller. The music was done by Harry McFraney, done every who's done the music for every one of these films. The cinematography was done by John Cranehouse, who's also done every one of those. And this was edited by Bruce Green. The production company was Terror Inc., which is different from the last film. It was distributed by Paramount Pictures, as I said earlier in the film. And this film was released on August 1st, 1986. And this film had a budget of $3 million. So it was a pretty big budget. I think it's not the high. I think I believe the highest budget so far. Going through what the box office is later on. I think it has the lowest box office number, um, at least that I've seen so far. But I'll get into that later. But let's talk about the actual film itself. I like the way the film starts, that it doesn't go into any of the credits yet. It just kind of starts right away in a big hard start. So pretty much, I don't exactly know how long the film takes place, because obviously this is pretty much a sequel from the fifth one, but they don't really talk about the fifth one all that much. Um, we see Tommy arrive with Pamela's truck, but we don't actually see Pamela. Um, there was rumors they wanted to bring her back, but what happened is then they didn't really want to because they thought because well, let me see. I think I have they were gonna use a lot of the old cast from 5, but they didn't but he didn't really think that and Mancuso wasn't fully in charge of the casting for the film. But what ended up happening was they just weren't brought back. The opening moments of the film was supposed to be Reggie and Pamela dying from Jason, but it just didn't happen. Sometimes I guess things just don't work out. Um, I believe too the person who played Pamela, I don't remember her name, had other acting roles coming up, so it just didn't work out. Um, but Tommy brought a different friend this time. Hold on, I'm just trying to find my notes so I can look up the guy's name. Um, he ended up with an Alan Hawes, who is one of and obviously you guys should know the story with Tommy. Um, he's gone through mental institutions pretty much since the last two films, and the series of the fourth movie really messed him up. So what he wants to do is to go to Jason's grave and actually make sure that he's dead. And he brought Alan on with him because the movie writers wrote it that way. They didn't really explain that. And obviously, Alan doesn't think this is a good idea. But Tommy says that he has to do this because this will give him closure to make sure he knows that Jason's actually dead. Which I kind of like the reasoning for it. I actually think that makes sense. So what happens is they go to Jason's grave, and Alan sees it, but that's not enough for Tommy. He has to dig up. He has to dig it up. So he digs into the grave, and then he sees his casket. That's not enough for him either, so he asks Alan to hand him the crowbar. Alan's starting to get really creeped out about this, but he hands him the crowbar anyways, and he breaks into the casket, um, and he sees Jason's rotten dead corpse. And you would think that would be enough for Tommy to realize that Jason's finally dead, but that wasn't even enough for him to be dead. What happens is he has gasoline, and he rips off. I forget, like he rips up you know, um, part of the fence. Yeah, he rips up part of the metal fence post from Jason because he starts to have flashbacks of when he was killing Jason at the end of the fourth film, pretty much. So he stabs him again right through the heart. Um, and I think that makes sense that he would react this way because he's mentally fucked up. So it would make sense that he would react this way. Even though one logic flaw you could say is that Tommy Jarvis didn't seem as fucked up in this movie as he did in the last film. Maybe he's had more help since then, so I guess that's kind of like one of the things we have to overlook a little bit. But um, that's not even enough. What ends up happening is they go to leave. Um, then the metal fence post gets struck by lightning, and of course, because Jason's connected to it, Jason's corpse is connected to it. Um, it obviously means he's going to be brought back to life. It gets struck by lightning twice. Tommy and Alan jump out of the way, and we see one of Jason's eyeballs open. So that means that this lightning resurrected Jason. So pretty much Tommy was a dumbass, and resurrected Jason back from the dead. So um, he doesn't know about this yet. Tommy looks into the grave, and thinks that Jason is dead and goes to walk out of the grave and I guess leave. But Jason grabs him by the leg and tries to pull him into the grave. But Tommy does the best he can to fight him off. And Tommy ends up actually no. What ends up happening is Tommy ends up dumping gasoline all over Jason and he goes to light a match and I guess light him on and he was going to light him on fire, but it starts raining and it puts the match out and he can't light it back up and I guess he only has one match. Um so it failed and then Alan tries to ambush Jason in the back and hit him in the back of the head with a shovel, but it breaks right off the handle, and it has Jason doesn't feel any effects from it, so he turns around and he punches Alan right through the gut and kills Alan, and he falls into the casket, and Tommy Jarvis runs away and drives off, and then it opens into the credits. So we can see too that Jason has some new supernatural powers now. He's really strong and nothing can hurt him now. So pretty much, not only did Tommy revive Jason, he's made him stronger. I really like the opening scene, even if you could take out those logic flaws that had Tommy not been such a dumbass and not been so mindly fucked that he would that this whole sixth movie wouldn't have even happened. But I still really liked it. I really liked the way they brought Jason back. I thought it was really awesome. So Tommy tries to go one, and I like the way the opening credits where Jason grabs the metal fence post, and uses it as a weapon and stuff. I thought the opening credits were really good. So Tommy Jarvis tries to go tell the police that Jason's alive, and we meet one of the other main characters in the film, um, Sheriff Mike Garris, and at first Mike Garris, Tommy just runs in a panic, and um, Mike Garris nearly shoots him because he runs in such a panic, but Tommy tells him not to shoot, and he tries to tell him what's going on with Jason, but um, the sheriff doesn't believe him because he knows Tommy's history. He knows that the murders that Jason did in the fourth film really messed him up, and he just thinks he's having an episode. So he locks him in the cell and is going to have him committed to a mental hospital the next day. So as all this happens, Jason makes his way is starting to make his way toward Camp Crystal Lake, which we find out is actually called I forget the name of it off the top of my head. Um, like Camp Green Forest, I believe it was. Um, yeah, no, Lake Forest Green. So I'm gonna probably forget that name. So, but we see these two kids who are gonna be counselors there, named Darren and Elizabeth, and they're driving to the camp. They get lost, and this is one thing that probably is the best thing about having cell phones nowadays, where you can just have GPSs, because stuff like this that's about to happen to them wouldn't happen to them because they never get lost. I mean, they probably still this scene could have still happened, but it wouldn't but this wouldn't have been set up this way. So they can't find their way towards camp um, Green Lake Forest or Forest Lake Green, whatever it's called, and um, they try to find directions. And Elizabeth notices Jason standing right there, and this is kind of like one of those moments where they broke the fourth wall because Elizabeth talks about how she's seen enough horror movies to know that a guy with the mask is no one to mess with. So she just wants to back up and leave, but they can't because there's like a mud hole right in the way, and they get stuck. So Dalen says they should just run him, drive the car right into him and act like they're gonna run him over. Um, but obviously, Jason doesn't budge, and he then Dalen grabs his pistol and is gonna shoot Jason, and Jason stabs one of the tires and stabs one of the headlights, and obviously this starts to scare Dalen and starts to scare um, Elizabeth as well, and Jason stabs him with the metal fence post, and obviously this scares the crap out of Elizabeth. And Elizabeth um, starts panicking. Jason stabs the metal fence post right through the windshield, and she ends up crawling out of the car. She falls into one of the pits, and Jason's standing over her, getting ready to stab her, and she tries to bribe him with money. But when she looks up, Jason's not there. We're supposed to think that Jason is gone. But then Jason pops up unexpectedly. He was probably on top of the car or something and stabs her right through the head with the metal fence post. I really liked this scene. I thought it was really good. And obviously, this kind of set up the tone for the rest of the film. And it just showed that Jason was back for vengeance. Um, so I liked it a lot. Um, and then the next day, um, Tommy wakes up, and we meet the rest of the main cast of the film. It's who are going to be counselors at camp at hold on, just give me a second, at Lake Forest Green. It's Megan Garris, who's obviously Sheriff Garris' daughter, and her friends Sissy, Court, and Paula, and they're gonna be counselors at the camp, and they tell her dad that Darren and Elizabeth haven't been seen because obviously we know that they've been killed, so they want Sheriff Garvis to do something about it, but he really can't do anything about it. But he said he would put some sort of call in for it. And Tommy tries to warn him about Jason, but they've always believed that Jason's been some sort of urban legend, that he doesn't exist. But and they tell Sheriff Garvis tells them that Tommy's just messed up and crazy, and um, Sheriff Garris says that tells him to leave, and Megan says to take it easy on tells her dad to take it easy on Tommy because she thinks she's kind of cute. So obviously we find out she has a crush on Tommy because she thinks he's cute, and Sheriff Garvis realizes that Tommy's going to be a threat and scare all the residents in the town. So he tells them to leave. And what I liked about this too is Tommy even mentioned that you can change the name all you want, but it's still going to be Camp Crystal Lake to Jason, so I liked it. But yeah, pretty much what Sheriff Garris is going to do is he's going to kick Tommy out of town pretty much. And I like this. And I'll say this about Megan Garris. The starting of the film and like the middle of the film, she becomes off as like this stupid blonde character, but she actually becomes a pretty strong character at the end of the film. I gave away the end of the film, but it's 1986. If you haven't seen this movie, I don't know what you're doing here, anyways. But anyhow, then what happens is I believe what happens next is Jason interrupts a paintball game. I forget the people who were playing paintball. Their names were. I'm gonna try to see if I can get all their names. It was Larry, Stan, Katie, Roy, Nancy, and Moulton. I probably messed up some of their names, but whatever. But pretty much what happens is everybody is playing paintball, which these were like 30-year-olds playing paintball. So they're probably like some losers that haven't achieved anything in life, and this is like the only time they feel like they're big shots. And a couple of them get killed, not by Jason, but they get killed by people just playing paintballs, and they have to put the headbands dead on them. And we meet one of the guys, I believe his name was Bert, who is very sexist towards women, and he's cutting down vines, and he reaches and he has a machete, and when he reaches up, Jason grabs him by the arm and throws him at a tree, and he ends up hitting the tree face first, and the impact kills him, and Jason rips his arm off completely. What I liked about this too is when his blood went on the tree, it was actually in the shape of a smiley face, And I have a feeling that there's no way you can plan something like that. I have a feeling that that just happened kind of on the fly, and they just kind of went with that. Um, and Jason, you can kind of start to see is starting to notice that he's really strong now because he looks at the fact that um, he ripped off Bert's arm, or whoever his name was. I think his name was Bert though, and realizes that he's stronger than what he was. And then we meet Nancy, Roy, and oh, did I just change the screenshot by accident? Let me see if I can fix that. How do I fix that? I just changed the freaking. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. I believe I fixed it. I have no idea though. Let me check. Yes. Okay. I didn't even mean to do that. All right. Let me continue talking. I edit that out, but sometimes you get to see the mistakes. Um, so yeah, then Roy, Nancy, and Moulton, who we saw playing paintball earlier, are trying to find one of their players, and I don't know. No, I think it was Land, Stan, and Katie. It was somebody like that. But Jason pops up out of nowhere and kills them all in one swing with a machete. I thought it looked really cool. And then we meet Roy, who's very unathletic. Um, he's tripping over vines, and there was one scene where he grabs on like a stick of a branch and it breaks off, and he tries to put it back on. It was pretty funny. And he sees all this go down, and he's somehow able to run away from Jason perfectly fine. And he shoots him with the paintball gun first, and then Jason, I believe, throws the knife at him, or throws the machete at him, and he dies. I forget exactly how he dies, but I think that's how he died, pretty much. Um, I like that scene a lot. Um, you could say this added nothing to the plot, but I still thought it was a really cool scene. And as all this is happening, um, the kids arrive at the camp, and um, Sissy, Court, and Paula think that Tommy, they find out that Megan has the hots for Tommy, but they think he's just nuts. And Megan's trying to say maybe the Jason thing really isn't an urban legend. Maybe um, he really did see his mom get decapitated. Maybe he really did die drowning. Um, but we just don't know that. Obviously, this was just kind of to set up the tone of the film. I really liked it. And then I kind of like this because she even mentions that today's Friday the 13th. And then she says, you know what's worse than Jason? And then the kids arrive. I like that scene a lot. I really liked, the kids arriving and everybody being afraid of them. So um, I liked it. And then they even said, like, I wish it was Jason, Megan, and stuff. And I kind of liked it, too, that they changed up the format this time and they actually brought kids to the camp because it was nice to see how the kids would react if Jason was doing all these murders. I really thought it was a nice scene. And then, so yeah, I thought it was nice. And then, what ends up happening next? And then, well, this doesn't happen next, but I'll just say it now. All the kids, all the counselors and stuff, and they start to get worried too when Darren and Elizabeth don't show up, and all the counselors and stuff um, planning stuff with the kids, talking about how they're gonna have this great weekend and everything, which we know wasn't gonna be the case. And then Tommy is being thrown out of town. The police follow him in his truck, and Tommy wants to drive back to the cemetery because he knows that Jason grave's gonna be all dug up. But then the problem, and I like this too. I thought it was a really nice scene. But the problem is we meet the grave digger, who his name is Moten, who is an absolute alcoholic. We saw earlier in the film um, he was filling in Jason's grave, and I kind of like this scene because he says, "Jason, why would anyone want to go to dig up Jason?" And he looks right at the camera and says, um, probably for their own sick entertainment. Kind of again breaking the fourth wall. I really liked it, and eventually Sheriff Govis tackles Tommy to the ground, handcuffs him, and then he sees Moten, and he wants Moten to say that somebody dug it up, and he doesn't really say anything because he's just out of it. So they end up taking Tommy away, and Sheriff throws Tommy out of town, and the sheriff tells Tommy that if he ever sees him again, he'll lock his ass up or beat the crap out of him or something like that. I did like though the scene when Moulton says, "What do they think I'm a fault head?" and it cuts to the kid saying yes right afterwards. I thought that was a nice transition. Um, but then later on in the night, um, Moulton is just drunk, and absolutely drunk. We meet this couple, Steven and Annette, who just recently got engaged. And Annette looked like she was like 40 years older than him, so I don't know if he only was married in her for money or whatever, and they were about to have sex. And Jason pops up, and I like this too because Martin even is looking at his alcohol. I believe it was called Candace, but I don't remember exactly what it was. He drinks it, and he says, "One day you're gonna be the death of me." And then Jason pops up out of nowhere because he throws the bottle, and he doesn't. When he doesn't hear it hit the ground, he turns around. Jason um, is right behind him, and he crushes the bottle with his bare hands and stabs um, Martin with it, so that kind of tied into that quote. And when he hears Martin scream, Steven wants to go do something about it. So, but Annette says just leave it be. But then Steven, of course, doesn't want to, so he goes to see it. And when he sees that Jason's killed Martin, and Jason sees Martin, so no, Jason sees Steven, Steven runs away. They get on like the motorcycle or power scooter. I don't really know what it was because I didn't pay attention to what it was. And before they take off, Jason stabs them both through the gut at the same time. Thought that was awesome. And yeah, I really liked it. Um, thought it was really good. And then that's about it. Um, but what else was I gonna say? Yeah, I really like this scene a lot here. Um, and I just kind of liked again they had more breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that. And then back at the camp, um, Megan has gone to her father, her father's at the police office, the police station. I guess to see Tommy Jarvis is what they were implying, and Sissy and Paula are at the camp, and they actually make this game up with codes where it was called like I forget the name of the game, but it was called like Wool of Jason or something, where the Jack was Jason and one of the queens was them, and everybody else was the campers. It was actually a nice way to break the fourth wall again. I really liked it, and then Paula gets concerned when she doesn't hear from Megan and she doesn't hear from Elizabeth and Dalen. Um, and they try to call them, but then one of the campers screams. We find out it's Nancy, and um, Nancy said that she had a nightmare. Well, no, they think Nancy has a nightmare because she was talking about this monster, but then she says it wasn't a nightmare because she said she thinks she saw Jason. But then they tell her that um, nobody's gonna come get him because we're gonna be up here all night across the cabins. I like this scene a lot, and then I like the way they utilized Nancy as one of the kids in this scene, and we find out that Court um, was having sex with, I believe her name was Nikki. Could be mistaken, because I'm usually typically mistaken. I just want to double check, make sure I have that right. Yeah, and the teens are doing the best they can to try to you know run the camp, but without Elizabeth and Darren, they're not without them there. They can't really run the camp very well. I think they were supposed to do some sort of big task at the camp, but they're just not there for it. But yeah, Court has sex with this girl named Nikki, um, and um, it's kind of like um, yeah. So it's kind of like they were having text, and I'm sorry, I just got a text. That's why they were having sex to like the tone of the music they were playing, and it was like 10 more minutes, and you could see Quartz already exhausted. Um, but then obviously, and they're in an RV, and Jason comes over and unplugs and cuts. Well, actually, he cuts the cord of the RV, but they just think it's unplugged, and um, Nikki wants Court to go out there and plug it back in. But then Court goes out there, and obviously he's scared shitless. And like I said, since there was no nudity in this film, they were just having sex with their shirts on and stuff, which wasn't believable at all. But I'm gonna give that a pass because I still thought it was really good. And he sees that the cord's been cut, so they're just gonna leave. But then the truck won't start. And I don't really know how LVs work, but I guess what happened is he didn't have the battery on or something like that. So she hits some sort of switch which causes the motor to run. And Court drives the LV really fast, and he cranks up this music called Frankenstein by Alice Cooper, which is a really good song. And Nikki is, because she's not buckled in, is just flipping all around the back of the LV. And you have a feeling when you watch this film, Jason's going to come out at some point, and that's exactly what happens. Jason pops up out of the bathroom and pulls her in and attacks her. I thought this was a really good scene, and it did kind of happen out of nowhere. And Court thinks that she's just yeah, and he doesn't really hear that she's actually being murdered. She just thinks she's having fun in the bathroom and stuff like that. But Jason murders her. He throws her head first, and her face like tints the RV or dents the RV. I don't know why I said tense. And then Jason pops out, and the music plays really loud, and Jason stabs Court right through the head with his switchblade knife, or whatever you call it, a pocket, but it's pretty much a pocket knife. And I did like that the music got like really eerie and stuff like that. When right after Jason killed Court, I thought that was nice. And then the RV tips over, catches on fire. Jason pops out of it like a badass. I thought it was awesome. Um, and I really like this kill scene a lot. What kind of sucked in this film, by the way, is they didn't play the old classic Jason music they used to play. That's the only thing I didn't really. Well, that's one of the only things I didn't really like in this movie. And then there was this part of the movie that I thought was really crappy. So Megan goes back to Sheriff Baker, and they're having an argument about Tommy Jarvis. What was really weird was it just cuts to the scene, and they're in the middle of this argument, and um, then they get a phone call, um, and they find out that you know, um, pretty much they find out Jason's victims, but they think that it's Tommy Jarvis pretending to be Jason to make it look like that Jason's alive. And I do kind of like this altercation because Megan, she says this to Megan, and Megan's like, I thought he says he wasn't an urban legend. He's like, he is, but he's trying to make the legend true. So Sheriff Garris leaves, and he tells Megan not to leave, and um, then Tommy Jarvis buys these books that has to do with God and stuff like that, and he calls the sheriff's office to tell them he has an idea about Jason, and he's at the town too. He's at a store that he's not supposed to be at, and which makes no sense. Why would you give the guy access to the truck? Because he can just come back. Like, I don't really think that made any sense. But um, she picks up the phone instead, and she offers to pick him up. Um, and Tommy tries to talk her out of not going, but Megan wants to go anyways because she thinks Tommy's cute. And then they drive in her car. They go to Camp. I'm just gonna call it Camp Crystal Lake at this point. And they want to block. Tommy wants her to tell her when they're gonna when they when he sees like a cop blockade, and he sees it right away, and then it leads to like this car chase that really had nothing to do with the film. She tries to hide Tommy, and it like keeps zooming up to her vagina. No, but she's wearing clothes and stuff. It was really weird, but eventually they get caught um, because they drive right into Sheriff Garris is and stuff like that. And then Tommy, what was I gonna say? So yeah, that's that. They get taken back to the police station. I'll get back to that in a minute. And then what happens is back at the camp, um, Sissy and Paula, um, Paula's sleeping and Sissy's just happens to be awake. I forget exactly what she was doing, but then she hears Jason, but they think it's Court playing a prank on him. So um, Sissy dumps a beer out the window, and when they don't, Jen she goes to look out the window, I guess, to see if they got on him. And Jason pops up out of nowhere, pulls her through the window, and it happened to be open. So, and Jason twists Sissy's head like completely 360, um, and turns it completely around and kills her. Because if your head gets turned around, you're obviously gonna die. And Paula wakes up and thinks it's just them playing a prank on each other. And Jason picks up Sissy's dead body, and um, Nancy sees this, who's the little girl that was scared earlier. And I liked the scene next when Nancy had the bloody knife or the bloody machete of Jason, and it shows it off camera. And we were supposed to have thought it was Jason, but I accidentally gave it away that it was Nancy instead. And they think it's fake. Well, at least Paula does, and think it's just Court um, and Sissy playing tricks on each other. So they decide to go find them, and if they scare them, they'll scare them right back. And I guess they didn't find them, so Paula puts Nancy to bed, and she gives Nancy advice that if you get scared, do what I did and just pray, and the scary thing won't be there anymore. Um, and what happens is Megan walks back to her cabin, and um, I liked the way they built up the scare scenes. Like, she popped up and said, "See you in the morning," and Jason was watching over her. When she was walking, Jason was just following her, and I really liked the way the um, writers and the directors really built this up because you knew she was gonna die at some point. Um, she closes the cabin door, but then the wind opens it, and then she has to go close it. And then she finally has a sigh of relief, and Jason pops up out of nowhere and just completely murders Paula. We don't actually see her die, but we see like blood splat on the window, and he throws her through the window and um, throws her all around the room pretty much. And we see it becomes a completely bloody mess because later on, when people go in there, exactly where she was, it's a complete mess. So then what happens is what else happens? So then back at the what's it called? At the sheriff's office or the police station, um, um, Sheriff. I almost keep saying Sheriff Brackett because I'm thinking of Halloween 1 and 2. But no, Sheriff Garris is trying. Yeah, what am I thinking of? So Sheriff Garris is trying to convince Megan that this person's not a bad person, but Tommy and Megan are trying to convince them that Tommy isn't the guy doing the killing. Um, and they talk about how they think it's suspicious that the phone's up running at Camp Crystal Lake, but um, you know, Sheriff Garris says that they just didn't pay their phone bills, and then they get the call that Court and Nikki have died, and um, they want Tommy and Megan want to know what time this happened, and they said it was around 8:30, 9 o'clock ish, and they says they couldn't have been there because Tommy was with me the whole time, but he still doesn't believe her, and he leaves, and they lock Tommy in the cell, and Megan gets grounded. So what ends up happening is they come up with a plan where I forget the name of the where Deputy Rick um, oh, my leg hurts. They come up with a plan where they're gonna trick Deputy Rick into letting Tommy out by Tommy being really perverted towards Megan, but it's obviously all an act. And Megan points a gun at him, and he has like this um, revolver thing on it where he has a red dot, and wherever the red dot is will be the target. And that probably means to me that Tommy's not a really good shot. No, Deputy Rick isn't a very good shot because if he needs this, but whatever. I did like it because he says this line, wherever the red dot goes, boom. And he says this earlier to Tommy when they were trying to kick him out of town. And, you know, um, and Tommy says this to Deputy Rick. So Deputy Rick is forced to let Tommy out, and they lock Deputy Rick in there, and they leave. Um, and Tommy still doesn't want Megan to go, but Megan still insists on going. Megan definitely does not know when to say when to does not like to hear the word no. She just does not take no for an answer. So Tommy has this idea where he's gonna bring Jason back to his final resting place, to where he lived, which it really isn't where he lived because this is where he died. And if anything, that would just piss him off even more. But whatever. Um, it does make sense, I guess. So then, um, first the deputy Garrus and the other two officers, Pappies and Thornton, arrive at the camp to see if there's any suspicious activity going on. And what ends up happening is the officers scout the area, the deputy scouts the area, and when he sees that all these murders are gone down, he grabs a shotgun. And as he's doing all this stuff, um, Officer Thornton gets killed by Jason because he throws a dart at him and he falls into the into a boat. And then um, Officer Pappas, or yeah, Pappas, I'm just gonna call him, is looking around and he hears something in the bushes, and we know it's Jason, and he tries to get him to come out, but then Nancy, the little girl, because she sees Jason earlier in the film, and she tries to pray Jason away, and then when they hear the officers come, um, Jason goes away, and what's they tried to make it seem like that because she played Jason away, he left her alone, but that's not really why. Jason heard these noises and he went and did something about it. So don't even try to pull that bullshit with me. So what ends up happening is Nancy tries to tell him about Jason, but before she can really tell him, Jason pops up out of nowhere and crushes Officer Papa's head. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't as good as the part 3 when he really crushed the guy's head and his eyes just balled right out of it. I thought that was a little bit better. Um, and then Officer Garrus, no, sorry, Sheriff Garrus runs into Nancy and he takes her into the cabin and he takes all the boys with him and tells all the boys and girls to hide under the beds and not to get out until he comes back. And then he goes to deal with Jason. I thought this was a badass scene. He ends up tripping, I think, over the dead corpse of Officer Pappas, who's just completely bloody, and he has like a booger hanging out of his nose, which was funny. And he pops up and he sees Jason, and I think he was like legitimately surprised to see Jason. I think he was like in shock because nothing happens. Jason's about to kill him, and Officer Pappas shoots him, and Jason falls down. Which I like that he falls down because normally if it's just been a regular pistol or handheld gun, um, Jason's just walked through it. But um, because it's a shotgun and it has more power, Jason falls instead. And then we think Jason's dead, but he sits up and goes like this Frankenstein style. And then he shoots him again, and Jason sits up again, and Deputy Garrus shoots him 3 times with the pistol, but Jason just walks through it. And Sheriff Garrus didn't really have anything else to do, so he runs away, and Jason goes after him. But then Tommy and Megan arrive, and they look all over for their father. But Tommy's gonna go bring his plan into action. He grabs a boat, and there's more on that later. And Megan gets really worried when she can't see her dad. She goes in there, and the kids get scared. And I did like the scene where we see some of the kids. I believe their names were Billy and Mike. I don't know exactly what Billy and Tyan, and they don't think they're gonna really make it. They ask what they wanted to be when they grow up. So I thought that was some nice comedy stuff. And they go to radio. Megan goes to radio. Her dad. and call the police officers for help. But then when she finds Sissy's decapitated head, she gets all scared, and she's trying to ask for her dad. And when Jason hears her, and Deputy Garris has been hiding out in the bushes, he goes to attack her. But then Deputy Garris tackles Jason to the ground because he doesn't want Jason to attack his daughter, and his heart took over his mind. And he breaks a stick right across his face. He hits him a couple of times with a rock, but then Jason grabs him by the neck and breaks his spine and kills Sheriff Garris, which I actually liked Sheriff Garris in this film. Um, I thought he was a badass character, and it was kind of sad to see him die. And then Jason pops up out of the woods, and um, he pops up out of the cabin, and he goes to go after Megan, and he grabs her by the neck. But then Tommy distracts Jason and says, "I'm the one you want. I'm the one that killed you." And then he puts her down, and Tommy goes after her. But then Megan says Tommy, and then Jason gets like all confused, like he doesn't really know what to do. So I guess that's the trick to beating Jason, just confuse the fuck out of him, I guess. So then what happens is, but then Jason decides to go after Tommy, and Tommy has this idea where he's gonna bring Jason to his final resting place. So pretty much what he has this idea is he has like a rock on a chain, and he's gonna and he's going to wrap it around Jason's neck and drown him pretty much, and chain him down to the down into the water. But I don't really think Tommy. It seemed like a good plan, and it seemed like a good plan, but it didn't really work in execution because Tommy didn't, I guess, realize that Jason was going to end up having to go underwater at some point because his feet weren't going to be able to touch. So he went out a little too far. So then when he doesn't see Jason, he douses gasoline all over the water and lights the water on fire. But then when he doesn't see Jason, Jason ends up popping out, and him and Tommy get into a final battle. I thought this was awesome because we didn't get to see it in the last film. We get to see it here, and Tommy does chain Jason to the bottom, but then Jason pulls Tommy into the water. He chokes him, and Tommy passes out unconscious, and Jason's trapped to the bottom of the water, and the kids are wondering if he made it, and then Megan jumps in and saves him. But Jason grabs her underwater, and he grabs her by the leg, and Megan starts the motor of the boat, and the boat's broken in half too. But she starts the motor of the boat, and she finally gets it to start, and the propeller cuts Jason in the throat, um, Tom McLowan's father's pool filter, and then she ends up saving Tommy, gives him CPR, and then Tommy finally makes it, which that was supposed to represent prayer because Nancy prayed that he would survive, and he did. And then she says, Jason. Then Tommy says, Jason's home. It's over. And then the film ends with them showing the next day, Jason in the water, and his eyes are open, but he's trapped in there. So that kind of leaves us the question if there is going to be a sequel, and that's pretty much the end of the film. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of the film. It was a long review. I had a lot to say. I think I missed something, but if I missed anything, you guys can tell me. Now, originally the movie was supposed to end. There was a lot of ways it was. There was a lot of stuff that was left out of the film. And I'm gonna just read some of it. Um, additionally, so I'm just gonna read. So pretty much, not McDowell. I don't know why I say McDowell. McLolin's, since he offered a different kind of horror film, producers were skeptical about how this was going to work, and they edited the violence to avoid an X rating, so they had some gore, violence, and murders for the film. Originally, there was only supposed to be 13 murders, but then they added 16 because they added Moulton and obviously the engaged couple. So they were like added on. And originally, later on in the film, Moulton, the gravedigger, was supposed to have found Jason's father, Elias, and we were gonna find out some sort of backstory about Elias, but they couldn't really shoot that because Martin died, and they kind of wanted to leave Elias out of the film. But I actually thought that would have been a nice film. Um, but we just didn't get to see that. And then they cut out some fins at the end, and there was supposed to be 3 endings they shot, and only one. The one that we saw made it to the film. And I'll just say what the one ending Jason was gonna mask. Jason's, so I'll just read them. In one ending, Jason's mask floats to the surface of Crystal Lake, having been detached during his struggle with Megan. In another, Deputy um, Rick, Rick Colongi, I don't know how to say his last name, was seen trying to reach the jail cell keys after having been locked in by Tommy and Megan. The door to the police station opens and the film abruptly ends, indicating that Jason had managed to get free. And then obviously the producers disliked both of these endings, and as each left Jason's survival ambitious and wanted explicitly to be shown on screen that he was still capable of returning for a sequel. As a result, McLellan shot the film's current ending, showing a close-up for Jason's open, twitching eye. Um, and then that's pretty much the end of the post-production. And as for how the film did, I'll talk about that now. So the film opened to 1,610 theaters. It grossed $6.7 million in opening weekend, which I believe up to this point has been the lowest box office for the Jason films or the Friday the 13th franchise. And it hopefully will go on to gross a total of $19.4 million, which back then was $7.8 million, but obviously because of 2008, the way 2018 money situation and financial situations work, this is how it worked, and it ranked at 46 on the list of the year's top earners, and the numbers estimate the U.S. gross at 17.8 million, and obviously that's pretty much it for that. And then obviously the critics, they actually gave this film a positive review, but they still didn't like it very much. But they thought it was the best film, and the fans gave it overall a positive review. I'll just say this, and I'll probably keep saying it. Friday the 13th franchise is like one of those franchises the critics don't really like that much, and the fans love. So I think it's kind of like one of those films that critics and fans will never agree on. As for what I thought with this film, I thought this film was really damn good. I really like this film. I think it's probably the second best one in the series out of the ones I've seen so far. I really gotta say that it really is one of the best ones in the series. I did talk about it in part 4 how Friday the 13th really diminished after the fifth one. Really, well after the fourth one, and then it started in the fifth one. So um, but I did say I remember liking 5. No, not I hated 5. I remember liking this one, and I gotta say this one actually is really damn good. I really enjoyed this film. Um, I really liked the kills. I really liked the story with Tommy and Jason having the final confrontation, and I like the way they built to that. I like the way they really brought back Jason and really brought him back as a badass. I like some of the characters in the film. I liked, um, Sheriff. I liked Alan Hawes. I liked Sheriff. What's his name? Um, I liked Sheriff Garris. I liked. I did like Megan. Megan, I would say, is someone that comes off as a likable character at the end. You could kind of see she was kind of enforcing some sort of leadership, but she was trying to be the one to get the kids under control. And I obviously liked the what else characters? I liked Paula too. And Claude, he was fine. He was annoying, but his character's kind of in that movie to be annoying, so I kind of liked it. I liked some of the other characters that were in there. I obviously liked Jason. I thought this was one of Jason's best performances he's had in the franchise. And I just really liked the characters. I really liked the kills in this film. I really thought they were done really well. And I was gonna say what else I liked in this film, but now I don't remember. Um, so yeah, I really like this film. So let's go over now the cast of this film. Um, Thorne Matthews played Tommy Jarvis. They originally wanted to have. Um, I'm just trying to find out who it was. They originally wanted to have the person who played Tommy in the last film, um, John Shepard, come back, but he had retired from acting around this point, so he couldn't come back. And obviously, obviously, I always forget where the casting thing is. Thorne Matthews just had no Tom Matthews. Sorry, I thought it said Thorne Matthews. Tom Matthews was just available, so that just worked out. Jennifer Cook played Megan Garris, and they wanted to have a really attractive blonde be in the film, so that's why she was in there. David Cajun played Sheriff Mike Garris. Carrie Nolan played Paula. Referee Renee Jones played Sissy Baker. Tom Fridley played Court. Dan Darcy DeMoss played Nikki. Nancy McLaughlin played Lisbeth because some of the directors and writers, friends and stuff, and family were in this film. Tony Goldwyn played Darren. Alan Blumenfield played Larry. Matthew Faison played Stan. Anne Ryerson played Katie. Ron Plateau played Alan Hawes. Vincent Gastafurro played Deputy Rick Colgan. Michael Swan played Officer Papaz. Oh, I don't know how to say his last name. Tony Vickery played Nancy. Whitney Ridebeck played Roy. Bob Larkin played Mountain. Wallace Merrick played Wallace Moak played Bert. Roger Rose played Stephen. Cynthia Canada played Annette. Michael Norman played Officer Thornton. Justin Nowell played Billy. And Tommy Nowell played Tyann. And C.J. Graham and Dan Bradley both played Jason Voorhees. Obviously, they were both stuntmen in the past. And Dan Bradley, I believe it was, plays Jason in the scenes where he kills the people playing the paintball game. But then, for some odd reason, what's his name? Tom? Was it Tom? Tom McLaughlin didn't really like his performance of Jason, so he found this guy that hypnotized. He found this guy, C.J. Graham, who was like a Jason Voorhees hypnotist, and he would hypnotize his people to think they're in a Jason Voorhees situation. And he had done some stunt work, and he was a restaurant manager and stuff before, so he just fit the role really well. So they just went with him. And I thought they both did a really good job as Jason. I thought they did a really good job. And that's pretty much the film. I don't think I gave the film a great letter grade, actually. I just went on talking and forgot to give it a letter grade. If I had to give this a letter grade, what I didn't like about this film was I didn't really like the car chase that Megan and Tommy had, and there was just some low points of the film. And there was some other characters I didn't really like in this film. So, if I had to rate this film, I would rate it probably a B plus. I really like this film. I think if you had to ask me, it's probably the second best one in the franchise, in my opinion, anyways. If I was to do a ranking video right now, I would say it's the fourth one, this one, the second one, the first one, the third one, and then part 5. So that's that. That's pretty much the end of this review. I'm actually gonna in a couple minutes watch the next one, and then get that review up within the next hour or so, because it takes about an hour and something minutes to watch it, and then I do the research, and then that's that. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. Leave your thoughts on what you guys thought of this movie down below, and that's pretty much it, guys. Like, comment, and share this video so people watch it. Subscribe to this channel for more content, and click on the bell so that way every time I upload a video, you guys will get the notifications for it. Make sure you guys do the same thing for my CM brothers and No One Talking Native YouTube channels. That's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.